Hello, welcome to Leverage Point On Demand training. Thanks for joining. Today we'll be going over the new full screen templates available from Leverage Point. A full screen template contains all of the same interactive presentation functions as other Leverage Point value propositions. The most obviously unique feature of a full screen template is that your presentation will open and look more similar to a PowerPoint in presentation mode. Although full screen templates may have different designs and slide types, there is some common functionality for all of them that we'll review in this video. Now we'll switch over to a lightly branded generic template to navigate what your full screen template may look like when you first open it in a value model preview. First, navigation. You may have noticed the arrow icons in the bottom right-hand corner of your presentation screen. You can navigate your full screen value proposition by clicking on these individual arrows to go left or right. You could also use the arrow keys on your keyboard to do the same. In some instances, you may see an up or down arrow available to you as well. Up or down arrows refer to slides that may be stacked on top of one another. We'll go over how to do that shortly. The navigation arrows are also responsive to your browser zoom. So if you're zoomed in your browser, you may notice that the arrow keys look larger like this, or smaller like this. Remember, you can always go quickly to Control-0 to go back to 100% zoom on your screen, but you may have a different function depending on which browser you're using. The next thing to note is the hamburger menu in the bottom left-hand corner. You may notice it with the 3 stacked lines in the bottom left of every screen. To open it, just simply click right on it, and you'll see some actions across the top. The Home button will take you back to the Leverage Point home page that you have set by default. The slides will show you this navigation menu, which you could also use to skip to any slide within your presentation. And the Actions menu will represent most of what is available in previous Leverage Point value propositions with the More menu. We'll go over all of these as well. Lastly, to close the hamburger menu, you can click this Close button. You may notice that although I am in the Leverage Point value proposition, which you typically open in a browser, that the screen has opened up into full screen. This is a common functionality of most browsers. In the browser I'm using currently, I can use F11 to toggle in between full screen and not full screen. But if you have trouble finding that function on your browser, you can also use the hamburger menu under Actions to go through full screen toggle. Next is the slide sorter. To access the slide sorter, you can press the Escape button on your keyboard, or you can use the hamburger menu under Actions to open the slide sorter. The slide sorter can be used to turn on and off slides, to reorder slides, and to stack slides into the up and down function that we referred to earlier. To navigate the slide sorter, I can click left and right on my arrow key, similar to how you would navigate the full screen presentation itself. To drag and drop slides, simply click on a slide and drag it to the place that you would like it to be. You'll notice that the red line indicates where within my slide sorter I'll be dropping this slide. If you're making larger moves within your slide sorter, you may want to zoom out on the slide sorter itself, which will allow you to see more of the slides at once. In that case, dragging and dropping a slide over a long distance doesn't require as much patience when moving over each individual slide. To turn on and off slides within the slide sorter, you'll notice that there's a small checkbox that is either checked or unchecked at the bottom right corner of every slide within your slide sorter. To deselect a slide, simply click on the checkbox, and you'll notice that there'll be a slight discoloration on top of the slide that was already there. This is important because unlike previous Leverage Point value proposition templates, the number of slides set in a full screen template is already determined, meaning that you may have some slides that you may not need depending on the number of value drivers within your value model. So you'll need to use the slide sorter to turn on and off slides. To exit the slide sorter, you can either double-click on the slide that you're on, or you can use these two icons down at the bottom. Next is Edit Presentation. To access Edit Presentation, again, go to the hamburger menu within the Actions options and choose Edit Presentation. There are four main options within Edit Presentation for every slide that you may be looking at. One is to have buttons that turn things on and off within a slide or go through options. Notice the buttons here on this slide. Next, you can upload images to your presentation through Edit Presentation. Most image upload options will have this generic picture available to click on. By clicking on it, you'll open a dialog from which you can use to upload your own pictures. You can either choose from a picture that was already uploaded, or you could potentially upload a picture based off of what your needs are for that specific purpose. You could also choose to hide the image by clicking on this visible icon here. Next is an Edit Text option. Notice in my Edit Presentation, a green box formed around some text available on this screen. So I can edit these texts by clicking right into the text box to edit. The text will be formatted to a specific font, size, and color based off of the presets within your template, but you can override those decisions within this WYSIWYG editor. WYSIWYG is short for what you see is what you get. So in this case, although my text doesn't match what I see on my screen, if I were to adjust the font size, color adjustment on this WYSIWYG editor, that would then take over the default set in my presentation. You can also edit the slide names available in the navigation pane of the hamburger menu by clicking on this smaller hamburger menu in the bottom left-hand corner and go into my Slides tab. You'll notice the ability to rename my slides. This may be helpful if you're planning on using the hamburger menu to navigate through your presentation, as it's more descriptive to name your slides for what their specific purpose is than the generic names that have been attached to them by default. The last function of Edit Presentation is to select the values or names of variables, value drivers, price, and price components. Notice the slide that we're on right now. There are 6 variable options available on my screen, which you can see more clearly if I go into presentation mode. In this case, I may only want to select a couple of variables to appear on this screen, and obviously I want them to refer to specific variables instead of variable placeholders. Within Edit Presentation, I can choose how many variables I'd like to appear on the screen, and I can use these widget icons to select the variables that I'd want to appear on the screen for this specific value driver. In this case, the variables I want to look up refer to these specific variables from the value driver calculation. That is the lost productivity and the % reduction in downtime. I look up these variables by their names by clicking on the gear icon associated with each edit variable lookup. The first thing I want to do is choose whether this refers to a variable, value driver, or price component. And next I look up the variable by its name. And the last option is to choose its display property type. In this case, I want to display the value, and the edit icon here is already preset to show value. But notice I can also show the name of the variable, the notes for the variable, or the source for the variable. Next, I want to select the name for that same variable so I know what that number refers to. The process here is very much the same. I select the variable, I look up the variable that I'm choosing to refer to, and notice that it's already preset to name. If I wanted to choose a different variable name to associate with this option, some templates have the ability to write in your own variable name instead. This may be useful if the variable name is very specific for your model, so as to not confuse the modeler who is choosing different variables to place in their calculation, but doesn't fit very well in the slide. In this case, I would choose that visible icon that you notice we used in the picture widget earlier. And click on the Go to Presentation icon to see my presentation in full screen. So these are the main functions of Edit Presentation Mode. I'll quickly just go through and complete this value driver slide by making a couple other adjustments. First one is I want to choose my chart and go back to what my default setting was. For most people, this will be chart by default. Now you may notice that I didn't set the placeholders for my value driver name, for my value driver message up in the top right here, or how my value driver would appear in the chart itself. This is the only place where the template will be pulling defaults from your model. That is, what are the default placeholder IDs associated with your model? For value drivers, the default placeholder IDs will go in order in which they're created. So the first value driver created is AutoVD1, the second is AutoVD2, and so forth. If you want your model to show your value drivers in a different order, either within this chart or in this screen, you can go back to your model and access the placeholder widget menu. And here you see a complete value driver slide that's been set up with the variables I'd like in the formatting I've chosen. Notice these same edit presentation principles will be applicable to many different slides, whether they contain variables or not. In this one, you could call a pure messaging slide where you have access to edit text, edit an image, edit the label to the slide itself, but you don't see any possibility to look up variable values. Similar to this slide, where I may select the number of different columns available to present on my slide, but again, it's not formatted the same way as a value driver slide. Although in this case, there is an option to look up variable values on this slide. Your types of slide may vary depending on the template that you have in place. If you'd like a different type of slide available to you by default, please contact your LeveragePoint program manager or email techsupport@leveragepoint.com. The last two types of slides that are typically off by default are table slides and data slides. I can see they're off by default when I open up my slide sorter and see that my table slides are all turned off because they have this slight discoloration and they're not checked on. Table slides can be a great way to show a large set of data that you want people to look at all at once or perhaps to set the context for your upcoming value driver slide. If I open up my table slide and I go into Edit Presentation, you'll notice that there's a green overlay across my table. To create your table in the dimensions that you want, simply deselect all the rows and columns that you don't want to appear in your presentation. The same function of looking up variable names and values will appear in this slide in the same way that we were looking at before. The last slide to go over are the data slides. Data slides can be another great way to look up a list of information, present assumptions about an operation, or again, another way to collaborate with someone else internally. To edit a data slide, go to Edit Presentation, select the number of variables you'd like to appear on your slide, and then again, simply do a variable lookup of the names and values on this screen. The last thing to review within the full screen template functionality is Edit Presentation Notes. You may have noticed in this view that I'm in now, there's a gray box below each slide that I was looking at. This gray box represents the possibility of editing messaging notes that would appear within your presentation. That is, similar to a PowerPoint presentation, you can have one screen that is open to your presenter notes and the other screen that's open to your full screen presentation. To edit your presenter notes, click on the pencil icon next to the presentation area and type in the notes that you'd like to see. And click Save to close. Now when I go into my hamburger menu And on the Actions tab, you'll notice an option that says Open Presenter Notes. Opening Presenter Notes will open up another tab within your browser that will have not just the screen you're looking at, but the notes that you wrote for that specific slide next to them. This would be most useful if you had two screens to present on, but in this case, I'm showing them all on one screen. Notice that as I toggle through my slides in my presentation, my Presenter Notes tab also goes to the next slide. In this way, as I'm doing the presentation, I could always have notes for what I'd like to cover on each specific slide available to me. This covers most of the generic function available to full screen templates. You may have different template types and different fields available to you, but they generally all follow the same functionality. Again, if you'd like more information on individual functionality or the potential for adding different slides to your presentation, contact your LeveragePoint program manager or email techsupport@leveragepoint.com. Thanks for watching.